Hello, everyone. My name is Jorge Urquidi, and I'm with the Fuse Group within the City of Austin's Watershed Protection Department. Today, I will give a presentation on a subset of our duties, specifically on hydrologic real-time forecast modeling and first responder collaboration. First is the agenda I will be following. I will start things out with an overview of what Fuse is, how and why the team was formed, what are some of our current tasks, and some of the issues we addressed on a continuous basis. Then, I will touch upon how we develop our hydrology and hydraulic models with the help of the software BFlow. And lastly, how we use this data to understand and communicate flood risk to the public and to city, county, state, and federal policy and emergency management stakeholders. The Austin area is extremely flood prone. Due to a unique combination of geology, geography, and climate, we are located in an area known as Flash Flood Alley. We hold half the world record rainfall rates for 48 hours or less. Our program was founded in response to the tragic 1981 Memorial Day flood, which killed 13 people. Since 1996, there have been nearly 20 flood-related deaths in Austin and Travis County, and the area has periodically suffered devastating floods throughout its history. Most recently, Austin was hit by various and tremendous storm and flash flood events during Halloween 2013, Memorial Day 2015, the Forgotten Floods of 2015, and Halloween of 2015. For Halloween of 2015, several gauges in the Onion Basin reported rainfall totals of over 10 inches in 24 hours. The map displays shows the rainfall rates at this location for the 24-hour event. Some of these gauges in the area reported nearly 15 inches. I'll show some pictures of some of the damage up next. In this picture, we can see the damage done in the Lower Onion subdivisions. This is a picture of one of the residents' backyards. The entire area, this entire neighborhood was littered with broken fences, yards underwater, and cars on the street were submerged. This is a picture of the communication devices from the National Weather Service at the Austin Bergstrom International Airport. At, by this point, there had been 9 inches that had been reported before all communications had failed, and there were still 6 inches more to come for that specific area. This is a picture of residents living in the Quicksilver Boulevard, uh, and they are all waiting to try to get back to their houses. All of these folks were evacuated from their homes for safety and are just waiting all on the day for them to get back to their house. Again, this is in the Onion Creek watershed. And lastly, again, also in the Onion Creek watershed, uh, there's a picture of William Cannon Drive. It's a little bit difficult to see in this picture, but on the distance you can see the flood overtopped by Onion Creek. The flooding extent of this area was 400 feet wide. All of these situations are very comparable to what happened in Halloween of 2013. So the area and the neighbors were very familiar with the dangers that flooding came with. So back to the people who are constantly monitoring these conditions. FUSE includes a staff of 4, Scott Princeton, Carl MacArthur, an IT systems administrator, and myself. And we are responsible for watching the weather 24/7, maintaining and monitoring a large network of rain and stream gauges around the city, as well as all the low water crossing gate arms and flashing lights. When a storm comes, we're the ones who activate field crews to monitor, close, and reopen all the low water crossings in Austin. At sites where we don't have gate arms, our field crews will use barricades. Our barricades have the turnaround, don't drown message in both English and Spanish. This can be seen at the bottom right of this picture. We use a variety of tools like our SCADA base station, our predictive mapping website, radar and satellite imagery software, gauge-adjusted radar rainfall, and links to a ton of weather and flood-related websites. Here's a video of one of our low water crossings, in case you're not familiar with the area. This is Old San Antonio Road in the Slaughter watershed, a sub-basin of the Greater Onion Basin. This road is right next to the South Park Meadows Shopping Center. One of our stationary cameras takes a picture approximately every 5 minutes. The pictures showed occur over the course of roughly 3 to 4 hours. Takes a little while for things to develop, but then it grows rapidly once the water makes its way there. And rest assured, the road had been barricaded long before the road got up to that extent. So, we understand that Austin is under a consistent flood risk, and there is a team that monitors real-time conditions during active storm events. The next item in our agenda is what do we do with when we have a forecast of an imminent storm event? What do we do with the data provided by meteorological services? And how we implement it so that we can understand when is the water coming, where is the water coming, and what can we do to reduce the impact it can have on people's vehicles, houses, and their lives. The software we use with Fuse is called vFlow. vFlow was developed by View Inc., specifically by Dr. Baxter View, a professor from the Oklahoma University. The software uses a gridded, physics-based hydrologic model that can simulate stormwater runoff based on geospatial data to model interior locations in the drainage network. This is a fast and efficient tool for real-time forecasting of rainfall, runoff, and flooding. vFlow captures rainfall input from gauge-adjusted radar rainfall, GAR for short, as well as design storms and old rainfall data. The model can be consistently calibrated using historical data and field measurements to increase the accuracy of real-time forecasting. The model starts with a simple DEM, digital elevation model. From there, the user defines the size of the grid wanted. The finer the grid, the more accurate the results will be, but also the more processing power it will take, and also the more time the user will have to spend on making sure that every single cell is accurate. The digital elevation model is then turned into essentially the image presented on the left. The model will try to estimate if the cell type is overland, channel, rated channel, reservoir, or bay, or if it's a base cell. But it is expected that the user will have to refine this to improve the model performance. It is not needed to build a unit hydrograph for each of these. Basically, what we see here, even though they're all color black in this picture, is that you can kind of tell in the middle. Unfortunately, I can't point it with the mouse, but you can kind of tell in the middle that there is a little bit of a channel there, and most of the other cells are contributing to this channel. For the most part, the one in the middle would be the channel cells, whereas the rest of them would be considered either base cells, which only show direction, or overland cells, which are mostly just are used to define runoff for the channel cells. vFlow uses the kinematic wave equations also displayed, and your standard conservation of mass equations. For the overland cells, Manning's equation is used on every cell, while an analytic model method is used on the channel cells. Every cell has a multitude of other parameters that can be adjusted, which include, but aren't limited to, roughness, hydraulic conductivity, soil depth, initial saturation, abstraction, channel width, rainfall, and impervious cover. I often find myself constantly wiggling the parameters for a specific part of the stream to make sure that the model follows observed results. Also, all of these parameters can be adjusted either to the size of the cell or for the entire model. I also have to constantly go back and forth between our HECRES models and our VFlow models to make sure that the models are comparable to one another. And because HECRES does a fantastic job of giving um, rating curves. And it also is a great way to capture survey data. With all of these assumptions and calculations, the approach is very efficient for real-time modeling because of how fast it is, because it has a capability of modeling the entire basin, and because it generates flow and stage values for defined watch points. All in all, we've been pretty satisfied with the capabilities of the software to simulate our creeks here in the Austin area. That said, with this approach, some areas are definitely harder to model. Two of the biggest examples I can think of are Dry Creek and Barton Creek. Dry Creek is a pretty flat watershed, and the model often has a hard time being able to delineate the actual flooding extent, and adjusting a calibration factor can substantially change results. And in the case of Barton Creek, there is the presence of caves, and thus flow losses become extremely difficult to model, especially the case being so with higher flows. Still working on getting a better result for both of these, and I feel like I'm getting pretty close with Dry Creek, but with Barton, it is definitely a challenge to say the least. Back to the agenda and to the last topic of my presentation. We now know when the water is coming thanks to the meteorological forecast and with our friends in the National Weather Service. We know the areas that are likely going to be impacted, and once it's here, how will the watersheds respond to it? And the estimation of the maximum flows and stage we will see across several watersheds. And so the next question is, who cares and why? And what does FUSE do to provide this data to the interested stakeholders? One of the most powerful tools that not only the Watershed Protection Department, but the City of Austin as a whole offers is ATX Floods. ATX Floods is a website that can be accessed from anywhere in the world to check on real-time conditions on Central Texas road crossings. The name can be slightly misleading. ATX Floods is not just the City of Austin. Municipalities and other local governments in the counties of Llano, Burnett, Blanco, Hayes, Williamson, Bastrop, Caldwell, Lee, Fayette, and Travis counties use this website to update the public on the conditions of the roads and to inform which roads have been temporarily closed to the public. Showing this image very briefly, just to display at a glance all of the roads, or most of the roads, that have been known to overtop in the Central Texas area, and that over the last few years they've had to be marked as closed. Several hundreds are displayed, and it definitely feels that after every major storm event, we end up with way more points than what we started with. Additionally, we also have 12 cameras in the Austin area, which can be easily accessed via the website. These cameras can be found at Spicewood Springs Road at Bull Creek, River Hill Road at Cuernavaca Creek, East 45th Street at Waller Creek, West 12th Street at Shoal Creek, Old Bee Caves at Williamson Creek, Joe Tanner Boulevard at Williamson Creek, South First at Williamson Creek, West Ditmore Road at South Boggy Creek, Old San Antonio Road at Slaughter Creek, Bluff Springs Road at Onion Creek, and Colton Bluff Springs at Marble Creek. These pictures are updated approximately every 5 minutes. These pictures are the exact same ones that I used for the video that I showed earlier for Old San Antonio. Though I have, and most of it, as you could expect, most of the storm events come at night. So for that video is a little bit special because it was in broad daylight and it actually had a pretty good resolution. Lastly, ATX Floods offers links to several good resources for the public. Of note is Warn Central Texas, an emergency notification system to residents on Central Texas. Registering with Warren Central Texas allows local officials to contact their communities by phone, email, and text during times of disaster or public safety events. Another resource we offer to the public is gauge and stream data from over 170 of our gauges in the city. This can be accessed using atxhydromet.com. The data can be perused in a multitude of ways, and it can also be downloaded on 180-day intervals. So, we have rainfall data, we have weather forecast data, and we have our H&H predictive models that have been made for most of the watersheds in the city of Austin and also covering the Travis County extent. This data can overwhelm the best of us, and it often becomes a challenge to navigate through all of this data simultaneously, not to mention the anxiety that comes from just having to deal with a catastrophic weather event, and also having to translate all of this data to other groups in the city of Austin. Such other groups and stakeholders can include the National Weather Service, Homeland Security, Austin Fire, Austin Police, Public Works, and city government. So as a need from all these stakeholders to stay informed, we have also developed a common operating picture, the COP for short. The COP brings together all of the resources I have talked to you about over the last few minutes, as well as 311 feed, satellite imagery, and previously developed maps to convey this data to multiple parties at our Emergency Operations Center. During your regular sunny day, the interface looks like in the picture. The map interface displays the geographical data that is automatically updated with the most recent data. And on the right, we can see the elevation of several watch points we have established throughout the city. Additionally, below it, you can see a live notification feed, which displays when a certain action or quote unquote rule has been triggered. Below, you can also, it'll be a little bit easier to see in the following slide, but it also includes our depth, duration, frequency graphs, as well as preview, which is a forecast model that takes into account the last 5 to 10 minutes of radar data and tries to give an extrapolation for the next hour. The great thing about this tool is that it is also possible to replay previous storm events. The one that I'm displaying right now is for our storm event 2 years ago on May 4th of 2018. Here, the blue and green in the map show the gauge-adjusted radar rainfall for the time interval, as well as the live notification feed of rules that had been triggered at that point. Additionally, you can see how the Watchpoints interface shows a lot more activity as it is displaying both how the past and future data. You can see that one of the most important watchpoint that we're displaying here is Williamson Creek at Kinchin Branch, because a lot of the water was coming in from down south, and you can see that several other water watch points were pretty active. Again, most of them being on Williamson Creek. It also displays ATX floods crossings. It displays a countdown of some of the in the middle. You can, if you can zoom in, you can probably see the 00. There's some countdowns of when we expect a certain rule to occur or to be triggered. As well as 311, as well as any time that you have a citizen contacting 311 reporting either water inside their house, water in their yard, or water on the streets, it will be reported, and all of this data is something that we will be able to see. Also down below, you can see how some of the watersheds, the depth, duration, frequency that I was talking about, and where where the rainfall was a little bit more intense at the time. I think at this point, a lot of the rain had already come by and gone, but it's still interesting to see them light up. So all of these tools are extremely important during our conversations with stakeholders. It allows us to show where the water is now, where the water is going, and how much time we have until it gets there. These are the most important questions to answer. These are the most important questions to answer during a storm event. And the common operating picture is a way that we are able to address these questions. With that, I thank you for your attention. I hope the last few minutes paint a small picture of what the FUSE team does in the city of Austin, and I will now take your questions.